Good evening and welcome to Southbank Centre's In the Green Room. My name is Toks Dada, Head of Classical Music at Southbank Centre. Over the past week, Southbank Centre's programmers and curators have hosted this series of conversations with the artists, friends and collaborators we have worked with during our time at Southbank Centre. Or in my case, as I've only been here for 6 months, an artist I've worked with before, but an artist with a very special relationship with Southbank Centre nonetheless. And I'm delighted to be joined by the violinist Nicola Benedetti. For those of you that don't know, although I'm sure you do, I will give a quick intro. Nikki is one of the most sought after violinists of her generation and has pretty much won every single award possible. There's been a Grammy, Classical Brit Awards, an MBE, CBE, Queen's Medal for Music. She's more than a violinist. She's an educator, and she's leading others to similarly educate the next generation of classical musicians through the Benedetti Foundation. She's a high-profile advocate for classical music, and if it wasn't already obvious, one of the most influential classical artists of today. Nikki, hi.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Such a pleasure.
How are you doing? How have you been, first of all?
Well, personally, I have had the fortune of most close family and friends being healthy during this time. My parents have both had their vaccines and just so many people desperate to get back out into the world. I've also been just hugely fortunate to have a very full and diverse experience of playing music, of teaching, of working with musicians in the flesh, also through screens, doing recordings and workshops. And it's certainly not been a stagnant time or even past the first 3 months. It's not even really been any kind of a time of routine for me, which for those first 3 months was wonderful to for the first time in my entire life be able to not be thinking, well, I have 4 days here and then I'm moving on to the next place. I literally don't remember the last time I felt that way since I left school when I was 15. So that was really a wonderful experience, actually. But I think we've all found that we're living sort of in two distinct realities. There's a more not solitary, but a more kind of personal environment that we've all had to cultivate and be more comfortable with for ourselves. But we're also, I think, when something strikes the world and it's a shared experience, we also live far outside of our personal experience too. And it's that real kind of pull and juxtaposition that has been both really interesting, but I think has caused a lot of people a lot of anxiety. It's really a lot to deal with that, I think. So yeah, I could go on, but I think that that's pretty much how I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting hearing you talk about that juxtaposition. As this last year has given many people time to reflect. Has the last year caused you to think differently about your work? Has the way that you thought about your work kind of evolved over the last year? I mean, you said that obviously you were still doing things and playing and doing things through the screen, but have you kind of fundamentally had a rethink about your work as an artist?
Oh yes, very much so. From a much more intimate standpoint, the pure relationship between myself and music and myself and the violin, I honestly have actually appreciated and I think developed well through the experience of kind of separating out what is filmed, recorded, and communicated to an audience purely through technology. And then the experience that I had, for example, in Snake Maltings, we did 6 concerts in a couple of days of solo violin recitals with a live audience, where I was so relishing in the audience there that I was just chatting throughout the entire concert and felt kind of closer to everyone than perhaps I would have done, a year ago. And I guess more comfortable and able to relax into and embrace that dialogue. But equally able to really embrace the way you can play when it's only microphones and cameras capturing what you're doing. It's a very different experience for me. I'm always like extremely aware of the physicality of my surroundings. I really feel very different inside, depending on what and who kind of is around me when I'm playing. So I've actually embraced and enjoyed trying to communicate very like viscerally and with as much weight and meaning as possible, but through cameras and microphones. So that's from a more kind of intimate and musical standpoint. And then I remember the article that you wrote must have been 6 months ago now, or maybe even longer, where you were outlining so many of what I loved about that article was a number of questions posed. It wasn't like, this is what we've done wrong and this is what we must do, but we must be considering these things and thinking about these things. And of course, I think we've all felt, we've all been aware, and that has been a particular kind of feature of this time. Whatever anyone is doing, because it's living online, most of us within a certain community have been aware of what that person's doing. So all of these kind of concerts going on behind the scenes all over the world that kind of you only know about if you're physically there, that's not really been the case anymore. But I think we've all probably felt both inspired and frustrated in equal measures by those who have just desperately tried to cling on to and return to what was, and to those and inspired by those who are really questioning the things that we've all known have to be questioned, but we're just on this train that just never stops, that we don't take the time to question it, and we're rarely bold enough to take a risk and to step off the train and to really look. So this was a gift for those who were willing to take that opportunity. This period of time was a gift for that. And I certainly, from a more kind of business standpoint, an industry standpoint, how to communicate with people standpoint, educational standpoint, I've tried. I don't know how bold I've really been, but I've tried, to ask difficult questions and to make changes.
For the benefit of the audience, the article that Nikki was referring to was a piece I wrote. I think it was probably a year ago now. Wow, it's insane, right? How much the time has really kind of flown by. Where I posed the question: does the classical music industry need to innovate to survive? And there was a series of points, a series of areas that I kind of thought these are the areas. So it's interesting hearing you talk about this train, if you will, that we're on normally, because it's like season to season, right? Like constantly, it's relentless, and there's never really a time to stop and think. What are some of the things for you that you think will or should ultimately change as we kind of start to come out of this period?
Well, I think the most obvious one, of course, is a blended presentation. So one that really pulls together the potential and capacity of digital presentation with that of a live experience, and to look at both for what they offer, not either as fallback options, but both as really strong options. There's a kind of closeness and intimacy that you can create with cameras and microphones that you'll never get if you have 2,500 people in a hall. So how can we it's the quality of presentation, but then there's also the breaking down of any physical or economic boundaries that stop people from actually coming into a hall. The digital presentation, of course, is has so much more open potential to all, and I think that is something that I think to analyze in a proactive and very positive way, how can you blend those two things together, as opposed to seeing one as a threat to the other, like, you know, the birth of radio being a threat to the birth of TV being a threat. You know, all of these things were inevitabilities, so how can we work with them all as positively as possible? I think the other thing that I've noticed is the relationship is kind of what I was talking about at the beginning, but for like a venue or an orchestra, those who have very strong relationships to their local communities, or who have managed to capitalize on, is an ugly word to use, but you know what I mean. They managed to enrichen that communication. I think have really seen the benefits of that level of community feel. You know, we actually have each other's backs in a way that isn't a purely commercial enterprise. It's something that's deeper than that, and that's more than that. And I think for the organizations where mission that is a mission that is so strong it can't be corrupted. I think this has been an opportunity for people to strengthen that and to kind of double down on that, because not everything should be seen as a business, and not everything can be. And where can you sort of redefine and then convince your wider community that this is what we must do for our well-being. This is what we must do for our culture. And so that kind of localized, and I think for orchestras and festivals and concert halls, I think for the ongoing restrictions for people to travel like they did before, you know, we have, it's a human problem all over the world. We don't look and appreciate what's on our doorstep, and I think this is an opportunity to do that more, and to use that digital platform to maintain that globalism and to maintain that international closeness. But it doesn't necessarily rely on, you know, having everyone from all over the world in that city at that time.
It's an excellent point. You know, coming out of the last year, you're absolutely right, and I completely agree that there needs to be more of a focus on, you know, the local, the homegrown talent, if you will. That doesn't mean to say that we should, you know, pull up the drawbridge, if you like, and not bring in international artists. Of course, we should still do that, but there do has to be a realignment, as you say. I completely agree. I think it also speaks to the climate agenda as well, right? Like, I think the carbon footprint of our industry is just horrendous, and so I think it really speaks to that too, right? I mean, that must have been one of the things that has changed for you, for sure, right? The amount of, you know, jumping on a plane, going back. I mean, what your schedule must have been like pre-pandemic, it doesn't even bear thinking about. So that must be definitely one change for you, right? That, you know, you're not flying around as much, you're, you know, at home more, that kind of thing.
Absolutely, yes. And I have to say I've not, and this is not universal at all. I have a lot of friends that really have missed the travel, desperate to leave their country or to, you know, go and travel somewhere. I haven't felt that way at all. And I actually actively hope to travel a little bit more responsibly in the future. I want to continue doing that. So I'm thinking 3, 4, 5 times before I'm like, yeah, I'll do a concert here, I'll do a concert there, I'll do this, I'll do that. I'm really thinking differently about that. I've traveled so much since I was young, you know. I'm loving being a little bit more centered. I hope, you know, I hope to sort of continue to do that.
So you talked about digital and the kind of opportunities there and going into the future, and that I know that you've been using digital in a really big way with the Benedetti Foundation. And I was just catching up on everything you've been doing online. I mean, it's incredible. I mean, in just, I think, 2 years, because it's 2019, I think that you set it up, and in just 2 years, how much you're doing. There was a tweet that I saw online which really summed up for me what you're doing with the foundation. I think it was a school in Glasgow or something, and they posted a picture of some kids in the classroom with instruments, and the caption was something like, "Could the next Nicola Benedetti be in this photo?" or something. And that for me really kind of summed up what you're doing with the foundation, right? Like inspiring the next generation of classical musicians, and the next Nicola Benedetti, if you like, could be one of those kids. But it's not just for kids, it's for teachers as well, right? You're changing the way that teachers teach. Just tell us about what you're doing and with the foundation.
Yeah, I mean, it's very multifaceted for sure, and to teach teachers and inspire, it's not that we are teaching teachers, but we're really just trying to give them that sense of solidarity, of appreciation, a boost, extra doses of information that are perhaps not so easy to come by. Also, an environment that's one that makes people feel like they can open up and ask questions and be a part of, not just a kind of squeaky clean or very dogmatic top down, this is how you must do things. We try to represent and to present a lot of opposing opinions of how to teach and what to teach. We also try to feature strongly those fundamental values of music education that we all talk about, but when you actually start to peel back the layers of what goes on in a classroom, when the peripatetic violin teacher has 30 minutes to teach 20 kids a violin and none of the instruments are tuned and everybody's scrambling around and so we try to kind of assess, okay, what is it practically possible to pass on within a realistic understanding of what teachers actually deal with. So we try to kind of look at the building blocks of music. You look at all the areas of kind of mind development that I would say speak largely to developing a sense of listening, understanding what form is, igniting a greater sense of like rhythmic nuance in the way you're able to relate to music. The same thing with melody, the same thing with hearing multiple parts going at once, the same thing with your physical movement to music. Then you have the whole kind of all the invisible parts of you, your feelings and thoughts and ways we communicate, ways we are able to kind of problem solve or just have that sense of confidence and trust in ourselves. Music, if taught well, is, and when I say music, I mean it's not just music appreciation, which is you learn to listen to, like a lot of the things that were recently advised in the model music curriculum. Music appreciation, yes, but a step further than that is kind of general musicianship, class teaching that is also participation. What of those qualities can you actually attack that definitely don't exist either in sports or in what's in your kind of mainstay curriculum? And then we do a huge amount of string focused teaching, and the group that falls within string playing is, along with singing, your kind of best bet at having mass music making experiences. I mean, you can have 100 trumpets in a room, but it's not like a sound that generally people will kind of gravitate towards. Or maybe they do, I don't know. So we try to give, regardless of level, stage, amount of time you've been studying. And by the way, we teach a lot of adult learners as well. And we have like a really popular adult learning classes that we put on all the time, which I think is just such a beautiful thing to see people of all ages, you know, really getting into their hobby or rekindling their relationship to their instrument. But what we try to advocate for is whether you're playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or you're trying to play Mendelssohn Violin Concerto, those fundamental basics are the same. And to take care of your whole physicality, to understand how sound breathes, to understand how the body speaks to itself, and also to, you know, to understand the power of your mental state and sense of being present. All of these things are so connected, and they apply to everyone at every stage, and you can do these things very well at any level of music making. And so, you know, we try as much as possible to impart those ideas. And the last thing I'll say about the foundation is what we're trying to do during this period. And with this comes, of course, risks, because when you're trying a lot of new things, you can get things wrong. But we're really trying to diversify as much as possible through our basic beliefs of what message you're trying to get across with music. Obviously, classical music is the foundation of what we do, but what are those areas that tell a real worldview story that looks to the folklore of traditions and cultures from around the world? And how can we better call upon those stories, question how those stories are being told? What are the inaccuracies that are told through prejudice and just general kind of hierarchical thinking in music that is so prevalent? And can we constantly attack those things, but do it through quality and through you know, a real uncompromising integrity, which is not, you know, easy, but is totally necessary if you want to be kind of honest during this time.
There is so much in there that the foundation is trying to achieve. I mean, what is it that you're actually doing in order to achieve this diversification? You know, is it about you know, repertoire and, you know, the composers that you're whose music you're kind of, you know, working with in these sessions? Like, what is it that you're actually doing in order to achieve that diversification that you talk about?
Yes, so all of the above. So we have looked at some of the basic principles of music, specifically rhythm and improvisation, and taken a lot of guests. We've invited in a lot of guests into the foundation that can take people down a lot of different roads with both improvisation and the building blocks of rhythm. So those are things that, of course, relate to classical music, but they're from cultures all over the world. Toward the end of last year, we took all of our participants on the first part of a trip around the world called the Global Violin Sessions, and we were in Hungary, we were in Serbia, we were in Finland. We had Wynton Marsalis write the tune that was then taken into all of these different sound worlds, and we had some fiddlers from the United States as well, and a real you know, honest discussion about what are who was leading who in the formation of all these different styles of music, and where did the core influences actually come from. We are embarking now on a Baroque project with the foundation that we've not announced yet, but we will be doing soon. And we're looking at bringing in, you know, groups of contemporary dancers to actually take those foundational like musts with Baroque music, which is that ground bass. How does the continuo section of the Baroque orchestra, what function does that play? How does that relate to the function of the rhythm section in the jazz band, or the drummer in music from countries all over the world, and can we take the basis of movement and of rhythm and of bass, that bass, I mean bass both in both spellings, in both terms, and how can we bring that to the fore and develop a new sense of appreciation and prioritization of those fundamental things when we're playing the music of Vivaldi, and also looking to kind of contemporize the music in a very real sense. How can we hear things that are 300 years old, and what of that has, what's the journey that it's made through the world, and where can you find commonalities? It's this whole thing of stripping music and our understanding of cultures down to its absolute core, and the more layers you strip away, the more things you see in common. You don't see more things that are different. I mean, you go to the basic human experiences we have. Falling in love for me feels, I think, very similar to how falling in love feels to anybody from anywhere. You know, it's a shared human value, and music tells you that story too. So we're constantly trying to look at ways to reveal that.
I think that's just so wonderful, Nikki, especially, you know, in this day and age, you know, when classical music often, you know, gets a very bad reputation for, you know, not being relevant and not, you know, having a place in people's everyday life and that kind of thing. And what you're doing is you're actually you're taking classical music and you're joining up those dots, so that, you know, for those young kids, for instance, actually it has greater meaning, which I think is just so important.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that it's a very difficult balance to strike, because if we're looking constantly at relevance to a younger population, and then the kind of natural inclination is to sort of creep slowly, or some just jump straight in to a really mainstream music, because of course when if you're going to talk about what's relevant, that is what's relevant, it's everywhere. But my view is that we are an educational charity. That music is already out there. You know, people can learn the words to songs because you can't escape it in your environment, in your surroundings. People can even you know, learn to sing certain songs. They can really quite easily pick up, you know, certain things on the guitar and the piano. I feel like that's possible to do without us. You know, that's accessible. You don't need our expertise and infrastructure and the kind of work that we do, or for that matter, the Southbank Centre. You don't need that in order to teach more of what already is so prevalent and so omnipresent and just, you know, inescapable in terms of mainstream musical culture. So I don't feel compromised on that at all. You know, I don't have any question marks over should we be, you know, teaching everyone how to sing such and such a song that really is in the mainstream, because I think that's there to be had already.
Yeah, no, I think it's admirable that you take that approach. I think it's great. So you mentioned Southbank Centre briefly, and I did want to talk a bit about your return to the centre at the beginning of July, 4th of July, which is the kind of it's not the closing concert of the reunion program, but it's the kind of final concert in that weekend. So we have a whole classical weekend with a number of different artists, but you'll be performing with Aurora Orchestra on that Sunday. How do you feel about being back in Royal Festival Hall with an actual live audience?
Oh, it's going to be so exciting, and to play that piece as well. I can't wait. And also because the Aurora Orchestra, they're so unique. They're such a phenomenal group of musicians. I know that the band that they have for that project is just, you know, out of this world, and that the process will be an intense collaboration over a period of 10 days or so. And of course, the concert at the Southbank will be the highlight of that for us. So, you know, I have all sorts of, you know, very strong opinions on Beethoven Violin Concerto, and what, given a very collaborative environment where we really step into other ways of hearing the piece and addressing the piece, what it's possible to do and what we'll be able to achieve. And I just can't wait to get stuck into that process with them. I believe the orchestra will be also playing the concerto from memory. So in terms of the flexibility with the musicians on the stage, you know, I have super high expectations for what the whole experience will be, both for us and I hope for the audience too. So I'm excited about it.
I'm sure it'll be absolutely thrilling, and this is becoming very much a kind of USP for Aurora, performing, you know, whole symphonies sometimes from memory. I mean, it's an incredible skill, and, you know, as an artist must just be so freeing and liberating. So I can't wait to hear you performing with them. As we talked about, you're doing so much, but you're also president of the European String Teachers Association. You support the National Youth Orchestra Young Ambassador Scheme, and way back last year, I think you were part of, you know, a number of high-profile classical artists who the Culture Secretary invited to a forum to have a conversation about, you know, how we navigate through this period. Is that ultimately what you see your role now, as kind of like an advocate almost?
I mean, it changes a lot. I have like a kind of permanent feeling of what haven't I done, or what should I have done differently or more. I mean, I generally feel like I'm kind of chasing my tail all the time. So, but you know, how I really feel about it is that a lot of people do more work than I do on advocacy, and but I will always trumpet about wherever I have a platform about the work that fundamentally a lot of people are doing behind the scenes. So, for example, the Parliament Square protest that was done, I can't think when that was now. I mean, that was a couple of months ago. When was that? Oh my goodness, ages ago now.
Time just seems to take on a different.
Yeah, exactly. You know, the work that group of, it was a group of women predominantly did pull that together. You know, I did a bunch of interviews on TV to speak about the work they were doing, but the work that they did, you know, I helped where and how I could, but it was them that did the work. And so, you know, it's kind of a source of, sometimes I feel strange about being the one that's talking about something that I don't necessarily feel wholly responsible for having made the change or made something happen. But I always ask the people that I'm trying to kind of represent, do you want, like, what do you need me to do? Where can you position me that's most helpful for you? And then I will do that thing, you know? And sometimes that is a very hands-on, behind the scenes, you know, advice giving or networking, putting people in touch with each other, or really just sitting on, you know, hour-long Zoom meetings trying to work out the logistics of something or other. But sometimes it is more of a kind of, you know, figurehead type position, and I don't always feel comfortable with it, but if they say that that's what they need and that it's helpful, then you know, I'm always happy to oblige.
You may not always feel comfortable, but I will say that I think you do it brilliantly. I really do. Oh, Nikki, it's been so lovely to catch up. It really has. Can't wait to see you on the 4th of July with Aurora Orchestra. Really, really can't wait. Thanks so much, Nikki. It's been so great to see you.
Lovely to see you. Take care. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.